This has left me feeling extremely shook, and I'd love some opinions on this, especially from someone with experience. So, last year, I had a very strange experience in a national forest out in California. I was by myself on a road trip with my dog, and I was driving pretty far into a national forest. I like to camp in national parks and forests because it's kind of isolated, so my dog can roam and they're free of charge. It's a trade-off for sketchy and rough drives into the park sometimes for lack of service and assistance. Anyway, I was driving up this dirt road kind of curling up a mountain around maybe 5 p.m. I think. It was very nice out, sunny and warm with a slight breeze. Nothing serious happened, but I felt extremely uncomfortable driving into the area, and that feeling just didn't let up. Driving up the mountain, I felt like I shouldn't stay there, and I even texted my boyfriend about it for as long as I could before my phone completely lost service. I was looking for a sign of another person having been around the area lately, but didn't see anything. I pulled over and got out of my car with my dog to look over the edge and noticed a dead squirrel and some broken glass mixed in with the dirt and gravel road. Yuka, my dog, starts growling slightly. She is vocal, but I've almost only ever seen or heard her growl at or with other dogs. I did see her growling at a possum once, so it could have been something that she smelt maybe. The place continued to make me feel quite on edge though, but I pride myself on being an independent traveler and backpacker, so I decided to continue at least a bit further with my grumbling pup to see if I could find a good place to camp. As we continue though, I begin to notice more dead animals. But keep in mind that no one is going to be going more than, say, 5 or 10 miles per hour up this thing, and that's if there's anyone even here. I hear men's voices and they sound close, and I think I should call out to them, so I stop my car, but then just kind of freeze up and feel like I shouldn't. I can't really make out what they're saying, and I don't see any sign of people anywhere, and I get back into my car and continue to slowly drive forward and cautiously, looking for where the voices could be coming from. Strange thing is, I've never run into other people in a national park or forest when I've gone this deep in. The unsettling feeling grows too about the voices, which have sort of come and gone a few times, and I give up and begin to turn my car around at this point. I honestly don't remember how Yuka was acting on the way down, because I was scared and focused on just getting out of there. I just distinctly remember being surprised at her grumbling when we were standing outside of my car. But kind of dangerously quickly, I went back down the mountain not seeing any sign of anyone. In the end, I decided to spring for luxury and got a hotel for the night. I figured that I was just fine, and it was just huge and open spaces that can be intimidating, I told myself. And the voices could have just been echoing from somewhere far off, and they just sounded close. Animals die, glass gets broken, nothing happened, cool. But I remember this place, and it sticks with me. Whenever I'm watching scary movies, if I'm walking my dog in the woods at night, nothing compares to the feeling that I had driving up that mountain, and it's honestly kind of interesting to me as well as frightening. But I recently happened across some information as well as some Native American law that made me feel extremely uneasy about the whole thing. So, fast forward a year, and I've mentioned this place to a few people and the haunting vibes it gave me, but nothing much more. I googled the national park once and didn't see anything, but it didn't look much either. I like scary movies and things of that nature, hence my fascination in this little event. So my boyfriend and I were coming off and finishing our road trip just yesterday. We were in Wyoming for a wedding. There were only 2 or 3 hours left and the sun had set, so we decided to listen to some scary podcasts and YouTube videos. We went from the No Sleep podcast to the X-Files and ended up on a True Scary Stories video dealing with Native American lore. I'm kind of half paying attention, just petting my dog, playing Pokemon on an emulator, and I hear the narrator mention Wendigos. It very briefly says what they are and casually mentions that they can mimic voices. I mean it when I say the most horrible chills that I've ever had in my life crawl down my spine, and I stare at my boyfriend and ask him if he remembers that national forest that I was freaked out about last year. He says that he does, and he reminds me that he texted me that I was probably close to a Wendigo. And I look back into that text and he actually did. I also remember him saying that, but didn't know much about their lore and thought that he was just being funny, like, yeah, Bigfoot is probably stalking you or something. And he was like, no. I mean, I was mostly joking, but I said it specifically because you said that you were hearing voices that you couldn't find a trace of. I feel really strange about this, and I start Googling Wendigos and find more information, etc., etc. But they're allegedly able to mimic human voices, and they would live in that sort of area, and it just kind of all matched up. Obviously, there's a ton of questionable info out there, but I tried to find some more reputable websites and authentic experiences. I then specifically looked up missing persons in the area, and the first headline that catches my eyes is "Another family goes missing." And I went through different websites and news articles of people going missing, but they're all a little hidden underneath national park websites and pictures of trees and whatnot. But I remembered looking up the forest about a year ago and didn't see anything, and realized that these stories just didn't seem to be talked about much, which also piqued my intuition. It was stated that well over 100 people in the past 8 years have gone missing and not been found there, on top of many which are just found dead. And the whole thing just has my intuition super spiked. Remembering how unsafe I felt and how much I just wanted to get out of there just terrifies me. And I felt so uneasy about what I was hearing and still do to this day. My dog and I are very close. She was actually a stray that started following me one day, and I ended up bringing her home from Costa Rica. So her little growls along the way just makes me feel like there was something wrong and more to the whole thing. I've done a lot of solo traveling both in and out of the country, and I have to say that I've never had such a bad feeling, on top of seeing an unnecessary amount of dead animals in a national forest, which just seems strange. I don't think I'll be doing any more solo traveling unless it's around civilization from now on, but does anyone know about authentic Native American lore, or has anyone else had a kind of inexplicable experience like this? Extra points if you've had any bad vibes in national forests from California too. So as a bit of a background here, I'm 21 now and still live at home while trying to get into school and whatnot. This house was brand new when we moved in, just built, so we were the first to live in it. My experiences aren't so much creepy as they are just strange, I think. Or maybe I've just become numb to them or something. Anyway, here it goes. So, my first experience I ever had was when I was 12. I used to have a cable box hooked up to my computer monitor in my bedroom. One night, around 11 PM I'd say, I was woken to my monitor turning on and the TV blaring at max volume. It scared the living hell out of me and my cat too. I jumped out of bed and quickly turned it off, and just as it felt quiet, I heard footsteps in our laundry room and the door to the garage slamming shut. A few days later, I was up in bed reading, and I glanced up to my doorway, and I remember clear as day a pure white face peeking in before casually moving out of view. A few months after this incident, I'd been going into the kitchen one night, again around 11 PM, to grab a late night snack. But for some fucking reason, I decided not to turn any lights on my way there and would just turn on my kitchen lights instead. Well, at the end of the hallway, just before entering the kitchen, I looked to my left towards where our dinner table was, and something was standing there behind the table in the corner. And I shit you not, it looked like someone just standing there with a bedsheet over them or something. I stared for what must have been a solid 10 seconds, calm, and then just casually went to turn on the light. I looked back, and whatever had been there was now gone. After these incidents, things became relatively calm again. I remember small incidences like seeing things out of the corner of my eye, I usually chalked it up to I just wasn't sleeping enough, but everything I thought I saw just felt too real to be imaginary. There had been a night too, around 1 a.m. I think, when I was in the living room just watching television on the couch, and out of nowhere, there was a loud bang against the window behind the couch. It sounded like a huge bird hit it, which I guess is possible, but at 1 a.m. that seems pretty unlikely if you ask me. I was too afraid to look and ended up just convincing myself that maybe an owl hit the window or something. After a while, too, things started to go missing. When I was 13, my dad, he woke me up earlier than usual one morning just asking me where my lunch bag went. I told him that it was in the same place as always, the second pocket in my backpack. I got up to check for myself and it wasn't there. Confused, I just assumed that I left it at school or something and went back to sleep. Around an hour later, that same morning, I checked my bag a second time and there was my lunch bag, in the same pocket it was supposed to be. Dad swore to me that he never found it, and I believed him honestly, because checking the bag leftovers from yesterday's lunch, they were still in there. But this was one of the strangest things out of all of my experiences, and honestly, I just can't explain it. When I was about 14, I came home from school one day and found that the faucet for the tub had been disassembled and set neatly in a pile on the toilet. I called my dad and he also swore again that he didn't touch it, and actually ended up blaming me for it. At 15, this one's a little bit funny to be honest. I was taking a shower and noticed the water had gotten significantly colder. There was no way that I'd used up all the hot water yet, so I turned around and saw the handle had been turned to cold. This asshole of a ghost, or whatever it was trying to get me to wash my hair with cold water like I should have in the first place. But now for the two scariest stories that I want to share with you guys. One might not have been paranormal at all, but hey, I'll let you guys decide for yourself. It could have just been an animal, but it was terrifying nonetheless. So, I was 17 at the time, and I've always had a fear of looking out windows at night. I can't explain it, it just kind of terrifies me to my core. But one night, I'd been laying in bed just Skyping my girlfriend when I glanced to my window. My bed is set right against the window, so I'm kind of laying against it almost. One of my blinds was crooked, kind of allowing me to see outside, and when I looked, two eyes, reflective ones, were staring right back at me. My house is a one-story, but my window is way too high off the ground for a raccoon or a possum to just peer through like that. Whatever it was stared at me for a solid 10 seconds before just disappearing. I made my girlfriend Skype with me until I fell asleep for 5 nights after that too, because it honestly just scared the crap out of me. And the most recent event was just last week. It was about 4 in the morning and I got up to use the bathroom in the hallway. As I was leaving the bathroom, I stopped and looked to my right directly into the kitchen just a few feet away. It took me a second to realize, but something was standing there. And as soon as I realized it, it quickly just walked off. Both my parents were asleep at the time, I can confirm that. And just a few days ago, my girlfriend had been using the bathroom when she texted me asking if I was in the bathroom. The bath is sectioned off by 2 areas, and the toilet and the bath have a door between the sinks. And she swore that she heard a thud on the counter and something being moved around. Anyway, thanks to anyone who listened to this, and I can't explain any of it, and I'm all ears if you guys have any ideas. So a little background before I get to the story. So, my family and I moved into a new house when I was 14. It was newly built and we were the first to live in it. It was my parents, my sister and I, and throughout the years, we'd have family get-togethers and parties where everyone has a great time. When I was 15, however, at one of these family get-togethers, I was sitting in the living room with one of my cousins while everyone else was in the dining room or in the front room. The living room is connected to the kitchen, so no matter where you sit, you can always either see the trash can, which it had a flipped lid, or the table. While me and my cousin were just chatting, something caused us both to turn our heads. We saw the trash can's lid flip on its own. We got up to check, confused if anyone had gotten up to throw something away, and no. Everyone was still playing a game or chatting in the same space. We figured that it was the vent above the trash can that made it flip, or something. Neither one of us said anything about it again, but we were both pretty creeped out by it. So we also had a babysitter who would stay with us occasionally because my father was on a tour in Iraq and my mother worked nights. I know it's ridiculous for a 14-year-old to have a babysitter, but my mother felt that it was necessary. Besides, the babysitter was only 5 years older than me, so I enjoyed our talks and time together. She slept in the guest bedroom for a while before I noticed that she started sleeping downstairs. One day, I asked her why she didn't sleep in the room, and her face turned pale, and she quietly asked, "Hey, have you ever had anything weird happen to you in this house?" I looked at her confused, but remembered the trash can incident. I didn't reply though, and she just kept looking at me and then said, "You know, I'm probably going to sound crazy, but I think your guest room has something in it." I continued to look at her, not saying a word, and she continued. "One night, I got up because I felt like something was just wrong, and I went to check on you guys, and you were both sleeping, so I went back to bed. Laying there, I started to notice the statue doll you have on the nightstand was staring at me. Like staring, but I turned around and I started falling back to sleep. And that's when I heard these whispers coming from the vent. I thought it was you guys again, but when I checked, you were both still asleep." She ended the conversation and went to sit on the couch, leaving me there kind of just baffled. But ever since that night, I started getting a bad feeling in my gut. When I was 17, we got a new dog who was a Chihuahua. She slept in my sister's room with her every night, and one night, I woke up to my sister just standing over me. And she said to me, "Can I sleep with you? The dog is freaking me out." I couldn't respond as I had just woken up and just kind of scooted over for her. In the morning, however, I asked my sister what had happened. She replied, "Well, I don't know. I was about to go to sleep when the dog sat up from my lap and just started whining and looking at the vent. She started barking, and that's when I took her and just went to your room." Again, I didn't respond. After a couple of days, I was still thinking about it, and it only hit me then about the babysitter that we used to have, when she said, "I heard whispers coming from the vent." I tried to shake it off because a couple of weeks later, my little cousins were spending the night. So on one night, one of them slept in my sister's room and the other, they slept with me in my room. I didn't dare want to sleep in the guest room, so I slept on the floor with my cousins on my bed. Eventually I fall asleep, but my room was pitch black when I woke up in the middle of the night. My doors to my bedroom closet were open as I had gotten out a blanket earlier. I don't know why, but I suddenly started to feel nervous. I kept looking at my closet too, and I had an iDog, which was a robotic dog that you connected to your iPod to do music, and it would play out of the speaker from its back. And depending on what music you played, it showed you its emotions by colors that turned on in the front of its face. Green was happy, yellow was for mellow, and red was for when it was mad. I remember that I hadn't touched it in weeks because it kind of ran out of batteries, and I hadn't gotten new ones, so I just left it on the shelf on the top of my closet. As I was staring into my closet, I started to hear growling, and I saw the iDog's face started to light up red. It barked and moved back and forth, and I reached up to my cousin to wake her up, but she was out of my reach and I was too scared to move. So I just sat there, staring, and finally it stopped. I didn't sleep the rest of the night that night, and in the morning I threw my iDog in the trash bin. Since then, I've kept my closet doors closed with a rope unless I'm changing clothes or something. But I noticed that there was a vent near the closet too. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this now, having almost forgotten everything, is because recently my boyfriend has been spending the night a lot. I'm 25 now and still living at home while I'm finishing school, and my sister lives in New York for the most part because of school too. My father and mother split up a while back, so he moved out, and my mum goes out a lot with her friends. So it's usually me and my boyfriend alone. My room only has a one-person fit bed, so we sleep in the guest room since my boyfriend likes to take up a lot of space when he moves around at night. One night, my mum was out of town for a weekend trip. I had just gotten out of the bathroom and walked into the room where my boyfriend was examining the vent. When I asked what he was doing, he said, "Hey, I could have sworn that I saw something coming out of this thing, but there's nothing now. Maybe it was just a bug or something? Do you have problems with that sort of thing here?" I must admit that I didn't pay much attention since we decided to just go to sleep right away. But I woke up in the middle of the night because I just had a nightmare, and I actually just recently suffered from PTSD, so it wasn't uncommon lately that I would have night terrors or whatnot. But anywho, I woke up and looked over at my boyfriend, who had his back against me and was snoring away. I got up to take some pills and returned to the room. When I did, my boyfriend was standing under the vent. I jokingly said, "What, did the bed bugs come back?" He didn't reply. I then sat on the bed, and the only light that was in the room was coming from the moon from the window. I then said, "Hey babe, come back to bed," but he still didn't reply. Then I said, "Babe, you're starting to freak me out." He turned, confused, like, "Your mum is out of town, right?" I nodded, not knowing where he was going with this, and then he said, "Sorry, I don't mean to scare you, but it's the weirdest thing, but I swear that she was calling for help." "What? What do you mean?" I asked, getting scared. "Well, I heard her yell faintly for help, but it was coming from the vent." We decided that he was probably dreaming in the end, and we just went back to sleep. Well, he did at least. The next weekend, my boyfriend had fallen asleep first, and I stayed up reading. When I finished, I turned off the light and cuddled with my boyfriend. When I was just about to drift off, I could have sworn that I heard my sister call me. I looked up, and there was nothing there. I figured it was just me about to start dreaming, so I turned back to go to sleep. And again, I heard my sister call me. This time, it was clear, and I looked at the direction of the sound, and it was coming from the vent. I kept looking, waiting, and then I heard, "Over here." I knew I wasn't dreaming this time, and I knew it had whispered that. I immediately shook my boyfriend awake to tell him what happened, and he insisted that I was dreaming like he did the week before and tried to calm me down. He hasn't spent the night since because I don't want to sleep in the guest room, and I don't want to sleep in my room either. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like the boogeyman is in my vents just waiting to come and get me, trying to lure me under it for something. And I'll tell you this much, as soon as I can, I'm moving out of here. So I've had weird experiences my whole life, and to be honest, you'll probably hear more from me on here. But this is the first time that I've told anyone about anything that's happened to me, and this happened a few years ago, and I wanted to share it with you guys to maybe get some answers. So, at the time, I was living with my parents, and I was probably 19 or 20, I think. I had 2 cats that slept in my room during the night, and another detail worth noting is that my room was set up with my bed against the wall across from the door, a dresser at the end of the bed, and the closet was across to the left of the dresser, so the opposite corner of my bed. My ceiling fan had one of those remote controls for the settings and the light too. A super cool feature for me because I hated getting out of bed to turn the lights off and all. Anyway, it was like mid-November, I think, and I don't remember what time it was that I woke up. I just know that it was the middle of the night. I don't know what prompted me to wake up so suddenly, but when I did, I heard a shuffle in my closet. I kept the litter boxes in my closet and the left door slightly cracked for the cats to get in and out, so I assumed that it was just one of them in the closet. When I turned over, my boy was right next to me where he always sleeps, and this made me prop up a little bit to see where my other cat was. I saw her silhouette in the dark, sound asleep at the foot of my bed, and my mind was really tired, and to be honest, I just didn't care for the annoyance of being woken up in the middle of the night, so my head hit the pillow once again. Keep in mind, I've dealt with strange things my whole life, so I didn't think much of the noise in the closet. As I was starting to drift off, though, I heard something slide across the floor from my closet to the end of my bed. The sound could be best described as a stuffed animal or a cat toy sliding across the floor. I glanced over once again to see both cats asleep, and now I began to panic. In the dark, still laying down trying to be as invisible as possible, I felt around for the remote to the light. I quickly found it and pressed the button, and nothing. And then I felt something jump up onto the bed at the foot. It felt about the size of my cat, so it was a small animal or creature-like. Now, what happened in this moment was just so terrifying that I don't even remember what happened with my cats. I'm not sure if they woke up and ran or were just unfazed completely, but this thing moved up my bed. I could feel the pressure and the movement of the sheets around me. I kept pressing the damn light button, but nothing was happening. And then this thing is on top of me all of a sudden, just scratching me. I started screaming, hoping that my parents down the hall would come in and save me, and I'm not sure if my screams were actual words like help or just terrifyingly screaming at the top of my lungs. But the creature felt like it had fur or hair or something. I never actually saw it, and that could have been because I closed my eyes out of fear, or it was just too dark or something, but it started speaking to me. I don't exactly remember the sound of its voice, only that it kept telling me, "It's October." And now, there was obviously confusion added to my terror. I mean, it was November, not October. So was this thing trying to tell me that its name was October or something? Or trying to tell me something about October? I was just too terrified at the time to question anything though, and I just kept screaming. And then, all of a sudden, the scratching just stopped and it just disappeared. I mean, the creature just literally vanished before my eyes. I clicked the button once again and the light finally turned on. I still don't remember where my cats ended up being, and I don't even remember falling back to sleep. But what I do remember is the next morning and having scratches on my stomach. But here's the even weirder part. When I told my parents about it, and more importantly, questioned why the hell they didn't come running when I was screaming, they said that they never heard me screaming. And my mum told me that she woke up feeling like something was watching her, and she looked up to see these eyes just staring at her from across the room. She explained to me that they looked like owl eyes, and the silhouette was of a small animal type thing. And then my dad told me about a dream that he had about a small furry creature, but I don't remember the rest of what he told me. And I don't know what this creature was or what it wanted, and more importantly, what is the significance of October? Was it a demon, or was it just sleep paralysis? I often question my sanity about this, but both my parents had similar encounters which validated my experience too. Has anyone else had a similar encounter, or does anyone have any info on what this creature could have been? I mean, the whole event just still gives me chills to this day.